Just out of curiosity, I would like to know how many people are doing a lot of virtual calls right now. Raise your hand if that's the case. Yes. Okay, good. Now, are those virtual calls important? Raise your hand if they are mission critical to, companies. Okay. So the thing about what I'm going to be teaching is I'm going to be talking about virtual engagement. So the idea that we need to do more than just turn on our cameras when we have these virtual calls. Okay. I'll tell you a little bit about my company, but before I do, everyone do this for me. Everyone put your hands like this. Everyone do exactly as I do. And if everyone doesn't, no one will feel silly. That's good. We're going to have a mutual experience here is what we're going for. Okay. It's so hard to connect through virtual calls, but this is one way of doing it. So watch close. Thumbs down. You're going to rotate them in like that. Okay. So the backs of the hands. Good. We're going to put one hand over the other hand like so. And we're going to interlock our fingers and straighten our elbows out. You're going to feel a little stretch up in the shoulder, but we won't be there for long. Do exactly as I do. Breathe in, breathe out. Do this up to the top like that. And we can see that a lot of people are stuck, okay, thinking about virtual engagement in a certain way. We're going to show you there's some subtleties, some things that you can do that are going to make you be able to deepen connection and command attention. So that's what we're going to go into, all right? And at any time, if you want to stop, ask me a question, please do. I'll make sure that I'm kind of reaching out, but I want to make sure that we get you what you're looking for. And again, we have such a spectrum of people here. Okay. So if we look at it, my background is I had a company, we were originally called the Infotainers, and our background is magic. What you just saw was kind of a little magic-y. Okay. And I had a team of guys who we called Infotainers, and we would work at trade shows around the world. And our job was to stop people walking the aisles, engage them, and convince them to spend time with us. And we would then integrate in the message of the company into the presentation. And so that's how we built the crowds, was we had an engaging, entertaining presentation. And we also found that we could kind of codify engagement in a way, okay? And so our whole purpose here at Engagify is to rehumanize business through engagement, okay? And so we're gonna kind of teach you some of the psychology, what we call neuro-engagement, that can help you hook your viewers' interest, pique their curiosity, and whet their appetite for what it is that you offer, okay? So whether or not you're working with companies, and this all doesn't just happen with virtual. This can happen face-to-face, but the problem is it's mostly virtual these days, okay? So if there was a way that you could capture the attention of the people you're trying to communicate, would that be helpful? Yes? Yeah? Okay, just checking. All right, so that little check-in and that hand raise, there's something there too. We'll talk about that, okay? But here's the state of engagement right now, is the fact this was taken at a trade show a couple of years ago. And this is a face-to-face, in-person event. But if you really look closely at that picture, you'll notice there's only about 3 people actually paying attention in that whole crowd, okay? That wasn't one of my crowds. That was someone else's, okay? What we want is we want to have people head up and lit up instead of head down and shut down on their phones. We want them consuming the information that you are offering, okay? So we're going to give you some tools and some thoughts and ideas on how to do that, okay? So these are some of the companies we work for. I'm not trying to sell you or anything. I'm just saying we've been around and we've worked for mostly tech companies. And I know there's some people who are talking about tech. So this is, who we would do this kind of stuff for. So when I talk about engagement, I'm talking about, sometimes we talk about HR engagement, engaging our employees. And some of this does apply, but I'm actually talking about, I'm talking about capturing attention and making sure people are listening, because that's, a really big issue. In fact, I read a stat the other day that it's something like 67% of people on a conference call aren't actually listening. You know what I mean? Like the staff meetings, that sort of thing. People put themselves on mute and turn their camera off. You don't even know if they're there anymore, right? So this is kind of where we're at. There's some certain challenges. So I'm dealing a lot with sales teams, right? And sales teams who've been thrown in to this virtual selling, arena, if you will. And a lot of them are looking like this, right? With the kind of backlit camera up the nose kind of shot happening. And if you know anything about like filmmaking or anything like that, the camera angle actually unconsciously sends signals about about that person. Okay, so this example of going up the nose gives that person kind of a snobby kind of looking down their nose kind of thing, right? And I was just actually teaching in investment advisors this kind of idea, and many of them had this up the nose shot. And when you think about, someone who's meeting a financial advisor, and maybe they're not a numbers person, they're intimidated by all the different, derivatives and, charts and stocks and all that kind of stuff. And then to talk to someone who's kind of looking down their nose at them, how does that make that prospect feel? Right? So there's some unconscious pieces that are built into that. So we want to be eye to eye, because the opposite, if you were looking down on someone, is that you're making yourself look diminutive if you have that camera angle, or inferior, right? And that's kind of the shot that they shoot children at in movies, is that downwards kind of thing. Okay, so this is just one of the ideas. The challenge I'm talking about here is sometimes people just don't know any better. We just turn on our cameras. There's no thought behind it. Okay, so there's that piece. And then the other challenge, and this is big, is that you are now competing with every piece of media, social media, videos that has ever been on a computer screen or TV screen before, because that's all available to those people right now. The emails, the distractions, all of that. How many people have you ever seen the movie, it's a new documentary that was on Netflix. It was called The Social Dilemma. Has anyone seen that? Yeah, Johan has, okay. Nikki, okay, few, Dorothea. So just to give you a quick synopsis of it, it's the idea that social media platforms, because of the growth hacking technology and the AI built into it, it is made to keep our attention and to keep us engaged on those platforms. And if anyone has been on any of the social media platforms, you understand that that's the case. You're just like, after a while, you're like, why am I here? You know what I mean? Like, and so that has, like, there's been some hacking there and the technology behind it. And the social dilemma was just basically, is that ethical? Is that a good thing? And these people who kind of are speaking out against social media companies for kind of dominating our time and almost, taking us away from our lives. So that's what we're competing with. And yet our engagement skills as person to person or online, they've probably gone down because we're so busy being consumed by all this technology that we're not upping our game. But that's what we're competing with. Okay, so this is kind of, again, where we're coming from. And then the last piece too is any of these virtual events. I don't know, is anyone a speaker for do any speaking for conferences or anything like that? I know Nikki, yeah, some of you. So if you've ever been on a big stage or gone to a conference in person, they make you look good, right? They throw their slides up there, they got the lights, all this kind of stuff. Well, now virtual conferences, what happens is the platform can be dressed up nice, but then they bring on speakers who are coming to you via their home, and it's sometimes a little bit of a letdown, right? So that's another one of the challenges that we're looking at. So we're going to kind of, let's get into this. So this is what we call the engagement gap. The idea that the front line, and we're normally dealing with revenue teams, customer facing companies, right? So mission critical conversations and sales pitches and presentations are happening. The front line, they're unaware, they're untrained, and unremarkable in some cases. I'm a believer, because I've been seeing it happen over time, is that soft skills are kind of going to the wayside. Okay. And so at Engagify, we're kind of hardcore soft skills. Okay. We're a big believer in that. Okay. And then on the prospect side of things, they're busy, they're distracted, and there's no time, all these virtual meetings happening. There's a lot going on, especially if people are working from home. So what we want to do is bridge that gap here at Engagify. Okay. So let's find out how we can have effective virtual meetings and make them more engaging. Okay. So to create engagement, one must be engaging. That makes sense. Okay. So how do we do that? What does that mean? Well, there is psychology to this. Okay. So we're going to kind of take a look at the neuroscience behind engagement and give you a few principles that you might want to write down. And it's all based on this idea of the primal brain, or what people call the croc brain. Okay. And the croc brain is, that base of the brain that is that fight or flight response, okay? It is like the guardians your attention, basically, okay? And so if we want to prime the primal brain, here are some of the things you want to look at, okay? And this is very much the crux of everything if you want to kind of look at how you can create more engagement, okay? So the first thing is it's visual, it must be visually stimulated. We're not unlike other animals who kind of like, you know those animals that are always kind of like a squirrel or something, they're always like looking around. We're not far from that. We like to see things visually, and it helps us. It helps us survive, okay? Now there is one, they say the number one thing that when you look at the brain scans for what stimulates the brain is a 3D object moving in space, which makes a lot of sense because a 3D object moving in space, if it's like a tiger coming at you, that's a good thing to know, right? To catch your attention, to protect you. But there is actually one, I guess, object in particular that is the most visually stimulating of all 3D objects. Would anyone like to venture a guess what that might be? You can unmute and yell it out loud if you like, if you know it. We're all looking at several of them right now to give you a hint.
Face.
Face, that's right now, yeah. So face, so when you think about that, and this is a little bit part of why the Zoom meetings are so darn exhausting, is that there is so much information happening. And if you were looking at the gallery, that's more exhausting because there's so many faces to see, okay? But we're always, and you think of a mother or a father with a child, right? You're deciphering, making sure that child's okay. There's so much information there, okay? So the idea that we're on a virtual call, of course we want to have our cameras on so that we can create engagement for that other person, right? And give them something to connect to. Now, one thing, I'm not going to get into it too much here, but I find this stuff fascinating, is how many people have ever heard of mirror neurons before? Mirror neurons, yeah, okay. So mirror neurons were discovered in the 90s in Parma, Italy. And the story goes, and there's many stories about how this happened, but it was that one of the experimenters picked up a grape, and the monkey that was attached to all the wires to the brain fired up because it wanted to grab. It was the same thing of it grabbing that grape, okay? The same things lit up. So the problem in virtual is that we don't have as much to fire these mirror neurons to create this connection, okay? If you've heard of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, there's a structure to rapport of mirroring and matching and all of this. So what I'm a big fan of, and it helps a bit, but it's not the same because we're not breathing the same air and we're not in the same space, is showing more body than you can. Showing more body. Sounds like you're saying showing more skin, but showing more of your body so that you can give something for them to resonate with in terms of mirror neurons, okay? So for example, I could be telling this whole story and just just my head here, right? But it's not giving you the same sense. Like if I say it's important that you present with impact and I do this, when I smack like that, there's a part of your brain lighting up because you've done that before. You understand that movement, okay? So the body language that I'm bringing, I want it to stimulate you. I want it to work. So showing off more of the body is just another way of creating more visual aspects there. So simple is another thing that we want to talk about. So making things as simple as possible. The brain only is about 2% of your entire body weight, and yet it consumes 20% of your energy. So your brain is always trying to protect itself, right? This is what this kind of croc brain, primal brain thing does. And if something is too complicated, your brain tunes out, right? And it's just like, forget it. I'm checking out. I don't want to waste the calories on trying to follow your line of reasoning or your line of thinking. So if you are trying to communicate to a group of people, especially if you need to persuade them, you need to make things like 1, 2, 3, right? Click, click, click. It has to be simple. Otherwise, you will overwhelm them and you lose them, okay? Which is a good reminder for me, is I get so passionate about this stuff. I start talking a little fast, okay? And when I have an international group, sometimes I got to remember, take a breath, Anders, slow down, right? Okay, so I will attempt to do that for you guys because I need to be cognizant of course, of the audience. Okay. Another piece that's important is that we create contrast. Okay. This is a silly story, but when I was about 16 years old, I worked in my small town, 500 people. I worked for the town, and I mowed lawns, did all this stuff. And one of the worst tasks I had to do was I had to paint the interior of the sewer treatment plant. Okay, so you can imagine the smell in there. But the thing was, after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you didn't smell it, right? Our brain only notices contrast. So things that change are what re-engage our attention. Okay, so creating contrast and creating dynamics. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can do that. And then the last one on this page is making it personal, what we call you-based. Okay, and so if things are going to affect you, if they're going to help you in your next project, in your next business, if it's going to save you from making a drastic mistake that could cost you millions of dollars, would you want to know? Yes, right? It always has to be. It's this is such a cliche in personal development, but the classic "What's in it for me?" Everybody's favorite radio station, WIIFM, right? Now, for years, we've known that in sales and marketing, you should write sales copy to make it affect those people, right? That make sure that it's about them, not about you as the seller. Like, our company does this and our company, it's like, no, you can achieve blah, 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 right? So they've actually proven that with experiments showing videos that are first person or showing videos that are third person and how it excites the brain. So we know that we want to make sure it is based on how it affects you. And again, that goes back to the croc brain. Am I going to get eaten? Am I going to eat it? Am I going to be killed? Or is it going to benefit me? That's the idea. Okay. Any questions so far, guys? Again, how's my speed? We're okay. You know what? Here's one thing. Did you guys see my little Rubik's cube here? My solved Rubik's cube. This Rubik's cube, really, it's about solving that problem of engagement. And even if we just go like this, watch, we can just solve it so quickly if we know what we're doing and we're able to change things up. Okay. So thanks now. All right, good. So magic for me has always been kind of a little bit of this of a metaphor to hang things on, to be able to create interest. Okay. And so that's also a little bit of the novelty is we're really spiking dopamine. There are basically two fundamental neurotransmitters that engagement, and it really goes back to that you-focused piece, is dopamine, right? The idea of novelty, anticipation, something's in it for me. And then the other one is the norepinephrine, which is the stress neurotransmitter. So it's like, is it going to eat me? Okay. And for most of us, it's a lot easier for us to lead with the carrot than try to beat our audience with a stick. Okay. Because that's just, there are subtler ways of doing it to create tension. Okay. But for most people, especially if you're a people pleaser, doing the dopamine piece is important. And just to give you a quick example, when you saw me on trade show floors there in my team, one of the things I would do to capture attention was I would offer to have someone win $2,000 US. And I'd wave around this $2,000 and I'd throw it on the floor, and people would start collecting around me because they're going, what's this guy doing? Okay. And so the spiking of the dopamine throughout my presentation was the through line to keep people's attention because they wanted to see what would happen. Okay. So I'll talk about that a little bit later too. So let's talk a little bit about creating contrast. Okay. So how are ways that we can create contrast in our virtual calls, in our presentations, even in person? Okay. So tones in terms of our voice, vocal inflection, modulation. There's lots of things you can do just auditorily. Okay. Facial expressions. There are some people that are excited and yet their face does not depict their excitement. Okay. And that's one of the biggest challenges too in virtual, is that the emotion doesn't come through very well. Okay. And so one of the things that if you are trying to present in a passionate way, you may want to actually say, I'm so excited to be here. I'm really passionate about this project, because how it comes across may not come across like you think it does. Okay. And we'll talk about energy levels in a moment here too. So those are just some thoughts for you. Of course, gestures, we talked a little bit about that body language, changing things up, how fast you speak, slowing it down, speeding it up, that kind of thing. Image size and frame. This is this idea that, I have space here I can play with. So, and if I need to turn my lights around so you can see me back here. But if I was coming back here and I wanted to tell a story and get really animated, I could do that. Or if I want to come in here and get intimate and tell you the secrets of engagement, well, this is where I could do this right here, right? So we're creating 3D space within the little frame of the box. That is one of the things that you can do to create the contrast. The other piece too that I talked about I just demonstrated was having props in your hand. It doesn't always have to be about slides. It can be about, using different like this to signify, a problem that we need to solve. Okay. So, and then camera angle is something that if you want to kind of get fancy, you can kind of get fancy, and you can, kind of show off sort of how things are, but you can, some people do it in different ways, whether they want that camera to be an aside where you can, share things. I actually have a comedian friend, and this is what he does, is that he'll be telling blah 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 a joke, you know what I'm saying, and then then he comes back and it's just like his little running gag that he uses within it. So it's just something fun to change things up. All right. So any questions or thoughts? Has anyone like in your own presentations, are there any tricks that anyone would like to share that kind of maybe resonate with what I've been talking about? Does there anyone have anything you'd like to share that relates, that you go, oh yeah, go ahead, Suresh, go ahead.
I didn't want to talk, but it's okay. When I do the conference, when someone pick up my mobile phone, like in your slides, and then you lost. So what I do extremely a lot of slides. In 1 hour, I run 120 slides, but everything is, I practice my talk. So the slides are helping me to show what I'm talking, just images and big letters and like that. And what I do my talk is also I combine stand-up comedian style. I talk about self-irony and talk about my things. So I engage them very stressful. So I don't let them to take their mobile phone. Even they can take their mobile phone, but they cannot take any pictures because I'm super fast. So I want that after 1 hour, when they leave, they have to think, what the fuck he said? Okay, I have to check it out in the Google. That's all. That's why I talk. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think the pace at which you present, and again, you don't want to lose people, right? You need to keep them with you, but going too slow can definitely bore, right? So, I mean, when I'm on a trade show floor, I go really fast and I also take people, the energy that I want to sweep them away with is this kind of like, you're going to want to see what I'm going to show you. You know what I mean? This kind of like, just wait. And that kind of sense of curiosity, or well, not curiosity, but the fact that I have a gift to give them. I know where I'm going. They kind of will give themselves over, and this is a little bit of a performance thing where people just be like, yes, take me. I don't know what you have to offer, but I want it, right? That's a piece of it, So that's, yeah, there's lots of ways that we can weave these things into what we do. Did anyone else want to share just before I continue on? I know that there's probably a lot of collective wisdom within such a diverse group here. Niall, did you have something?
Just one point. It's something you do very well, and it's very noticeable, which I've tried to do, but it's difficult, is to look into the camera. So you're looking at people, and that I think that's really powerful actually, but it's sometimes difficult to do if you're concentrating on what you're trying to say. And
that's going to be one of my next points, but let's right now. But that's okay. No, I'm glad. It's so here. I'll give you a quick tip that I have a have a training called Virtual Engagement Training. It's an online course, and we have like kind of a group training thing on Facebook too. I'll take a Post-it note, and I'm going to just do it really quick, and it's going to be really rough right now. You can use scissors and make it look nicer. But what I do is I basically make myself a little arrow, okay? And this one is very, very roughly done, okay? And the sticky part's right on here on the tip, okay? And I have, let me shift this back here so you can see this. And I have this DSLR camera, but I will just kind of stick that right to there. And this is how I train myself, okay? So that, you know, I'm looking and then I say, oh yeah, you know, like this kind of thing. And so that eye contact piece, and I mean, I do want to scan my audience. I have you guys in gallery, like you could see, right? You can see, I can see you, because I want the feedback loop of how am I doing? You know what I mean? Just like Suresh, you were talking about, you see a guy picking up their phone. I'm like, all right, we got to change something up, right? This isn't, I want to keep them engaged. You need that feedback loop. But this idea of eye contact is so interesting, especially in like a one-on-one. So let's just watch this. It's almost like a lack of eye contact loop that happens. So we were talking about feedback loops, but this is, let's say, you know, Sebastian, you're looking at me, right? And it looks like your camera is a little off angle with, yeah, see? Okay, we can see him right there. Okay, so if I looked at you, Sebastian, okay, and then you're looking at me in the eyes and I'm looking at you in the eyes, and now everyone like looking down, right? Or looking off center, okay? So my thing that I believe in is that, yes, I want to scan you. I want to get the feedback, but when I'm speaking, I'm going to pour my energy through that camera lens, okay? And I'm going to pretend that you're on the other side, even though, and if you were filming a video, that's what you'd have to do, right? You would just have to pretend they're there, but you're actually all there down here. I'm just going to pretend you're back there, you know? And so that's a good exercise for you to play with, okay? So anyways, yeah, I'm glad you noticed that now. And as soon as you said that, I was probably looking at you down here. I'm like, oh yes, you know. So it's tough. It's hard to do it all the time. But yeah. Anyways, okay. Let's keep going. So let's talk about playing big. Okay. Playing big means a number of things for me. I believe in standing up. Okay. For one, you're going to have the ability to access greater energy. Okay. And your body language, or I should say the actual body chemicals, or the neurochemicals are going to shift. They're going to change when you stand up. So many of us are doing so many of these damn calls, you know, and you're sitting there all day that you just turn your camera on. That's how you do your call. Okay. Now it depends on how important that call is, right? If it's just something casual, I don't care. But if it's important, and we're talking sales teams a lot of the time, it's all important. It's like you get your butt up, stand up, and make this more of a going concern. You know what I mean? The importance of everything kind of shifts when you stand. Okay. And the other side of it too is you're going to have better access to your voice, breathing. A lot of things change and shift when you try that out. So getting yourself a setup where you kind of have a standing desk. And look at Johan. Johan's he's doing it right now. All right, there we go. So movement attracts the eyes. So this is the idea too. Again, you'll be able to kind of move around a little bit. Of course, everything can be taken to extremes and can be done too much too. Okay, so I just want to give you that, you know, a little bit of a comes with a grain of salt, right? I believe that there's almost like a spectrum of like boring on one side and annoying on the other side, and engagement is somewhere in between, right? You have to find that sweet spot for yourself where you're doing more than doing nothing, and you're doing less than doing everything. Okay, so that's what I believe. Another thing that I talk about when I say play big, don't apologize for who you are. You know, own your expertise, own your body language, own your space. If you know, I was trained as a performer, when you go to talk or you go to do a presentation, you walk the stage before your presentation, and it's like you claim it. You know what I mean? And it's like this, you know, like this is mine. This is mine. You know, it's like You're just like, this is my space and people are going to come into my house. I'm going to invite them in. You know what I mean? This is where so just, and when I also say don't apologize, there's a lot of people who will do kind of like protective things on stage in body language, that they are, they're kind of apologizing for who they are instead of being, you know, standing tall and being wide. And I know it's maybe a little you know, controversial now, but Amy Cuddy came out with years ago, there was a TED talk about taking up more space, right? And the neurochemicals that would happen along with that. And you know what, whether or not they can reproduce her experiments or not, I know that there is something there just from my experience on stage, that people who play big have leadership qualities and we want to listen to them. We want to look at them, okay? So there's a big piece of that, okay? And then the other piece that I want to talk about playing big is this energy increase, okay? 33% more energy is required, in my opinion, just to get where you thought you would be. You need to get, just to be where you needed to be, and an extra third, okay? And the problem is without people actually in the room, you're not rising to the occasion that you would, okay? So it's like this webcam just kills energy in your presentations and you don't even realize it, right? I was doing, so I have all these clients, and one of my clients would hire me to do almost like a little teaser video for their virtual trade show booth. And they said, Anders, you have 30 seconds. You need to say all these things and we need it really peppy. You know, we want it like high energy. I'm like, guys, I could do high energy. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? So I filmed this video and I'm running and gunning and I think like, that's high energy. And then I play it back. It's only 30 seconds, right? So I record it, I play it back and I go, oh, that could have been peppier, you know? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to kill it with peppiness, right? I'm just going to be, I won't be able to stand myself watching it afterwards is what I'm thinking. And I do it and I play it back and I'm like, okay, it's getting there, but it wasn't where I thought it was, right? So that feedback loop is important too, and keeping it really tight. So if you ever wanted to kind of just see what it's like, do record yourself, you know, try that on and see how it's coming off. And then you sometimes realize you have to give a little bit more than you think, you know, and it's again, because we don't have that same connection, they're not in the same room, they can't feel our energy. We're coming across two-dimensional in a lot of cases, right? So a lot of issues that way. So one thing that I do want to show you too, which just in terms of a body language thing that I think is fascinating, and I will give you an example, is the idea of intention leads to tension, which creates attention. Okay, and I'm going to leave that up for a second. I'm going to grab a prop. 1 second, I should have had this out. Right, here we go. Okay, good. So let me show you this. So now I'll go. So this is, I'm going to teach you a quick little magic lesson here, okay? And this idea, I have an American 50-cent piece. It's just a coin, okay? But the idea that you put it in your hand and, you know, you squeeze it, you're making the magic happen. You blow it and it disappears. And then you can make it, you know, reappear wherever you want, okay? So this is, I will expose a little bit of a magic trick, of a coin trick, okay? But the idea here is that when I put the coin in my hand, I'm actually keeping it here, okay? This hand, let me move this back so I can just move back a little bit. This hand that actually has the coin drops to my side. And for people who are just learning magic, this is really hard to do. They will do this. They'll go, and then this hand just locks up because it feels so guilty, okay? So magicians learn how to relax. And that means that this hand will have a coin in it, but I'm just letting it hang. And when things just hang, no one cares about them, okay? So relaxedness. But if we want to have tension, okay? Tension will create that intention, okay? So what I'm saying is I want everyone to look at this hand. I give it more importance. I look at it, right? I give it attention, and I'm putting tension in this hand, and I'm even clenching my fist, which is making people going, I wonder what's happening to that coin, right? And as you make it vanish, and then it's gone, and meanwhile, I've got it palmed in my hand over here, okay? So all I'm saying is, in terms of your body, in terms of playing big, put a little bit more tension in what you are in your hands, or when you want to make a point, just give a little bit more energy into things and see how that changes, as opposed to being, what is it? There's a quote by Zig Ziglar that most people are be a meaningful specific as opposed to a wandering generality. Okay. And a wandering generality is kind of how a lot of our body language is. It's pretty loosey-goosey and it's not making a point. Okay. So that's what I want to talk about there. Okay. One other thing that is on the virtual side of things, I talk about slide hiding. And slide hiding can happen after a while, is that you put up a slide and you become this tiny little, see, like this guy up here, you become that tiny little guy in front of your slides, depending on what settings they have in Zoom, depending on what platform you're on. But it's important sometimes to pop out. And of course, I'm using OBS and sharing slides a little bit differently, but that's just another way to play big, okay, is to remind them who you're meeting with, okay? So with the last little bit of time, I will just kind of talk about some of the tools that I'm using in terms of equipment. People sometimes are interested in that. But if anyone has any questions at any time, do stop me, but I'll just kind of walk us through that if that's okay. All right, can you see it? Everyone okay? All right, so we want to have the right tools, because if we don't have the right tools, it's going to be hard to do our job, okay? And so these are some of the basics. Typically, we do talk about having an external camera, an external webcam, and they say that the built-in webcams are about 30 cents in China when they put them in there. So sometimes they don't handle light properly, and in my course I kind of do a side-by-side comparison and just how much nicer it is. There's a thing that we talk about in my training about first do no harm. You know what I mean? Can they hear you well? Can they see you? And then you can start layering in all these other engagement tactics and techniques and everything, okay? But we don't want to be distracting by how fuzzy we are or how bad we sound. So I'm using right now the one in the top left here. And then I have, I'll just show you guys again too. So I have that kind of mounted here. I have a key light, another light on the side. I have a few other lights. I do have a little Stream Deck, which is like a little shortcut button thing you might have heard of before. I also, just to show you, I also have a foot pedal that I use, and that helps me kind of do different camera switches and go into my slide shares and just kind of simplifies things. Because it's hard when you don't want to be thinking about the technology. You want to be thinking about how you need to be for the people that you have in front of you, right? And that's a big thing about being present. I wasn't going to talk about this, but there's a great book called The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox Cabane. And she said that charisma is a combination of 3 elements, okay? And you only need 2 of them to actually be charismatic. So the first one was warmth, okay? Being friendly, being kind, being nice, having heart, being someone that you want to be around. That makes sense. The second one was having presence, meaning that you are here in the now. You're being in the moment for the people here. You're not distracted. You're not living in the past, not living in the future. You're in the now, okay? And the third one was actually, oh, there we go. Thank you, Nikki. Quick with the chat there. He's got an eBay link, or not eBay, Amazon link right up there. The third one was power. Now, power is kind of that authority piece. It is that, it's a little subjective, because you can be, if you are an expert in your field, you have that power automatically, right? Because you are that expert. The examples they gave was Steve Jobs was someone who's charismatic, but he had presence and power, but he wasn't a warm and fuzzy guy. Okay, so he had that 2 out of 3. Then there was Bill Clinton, okay, President Bill Clinton, and he had warmth, he had presence, and they talk about his eye contact. Like, people still talk about it. It is so, like, his presence is so unbelievable that in a huge auditorium, you still feel like you're the only person in the room. Okay, amazing thing presence can do. And then the last piece, of course, power. He's a president, or was it President of the United States, right? So, so there's where, you know, those three come together. Anyways, let me get back to the equipment real quick. Sound considerations, again, we don't want to be annoying. I like using these lavalier mics so that you're capturing the sound right at its source, okay? So that will cut down on echo. I also have, these things are from IKEA. Can you see these things here? It's kind of dark behind there, but they're actually separators for like privacy screens. And I put them up on my desk, but they're made out of carpet, and they kind of have a carpet and a cushy foam to it. So any of that sound hopefully is not coming back to you as bad, okay? Another piece is, you know, background noise, of course, we don't want to distract. There's a cool thing called crisp.ai, which is a neat plugin you can use that eliminates background noise. There it is right there, in case you're interested. And then, yeah, your choice of your mic. Let's see how much time we have. Let me show you one quick thing. I'm gonna change my mic to my Logitech, and I want you guys to hear the difference, okay? So I've just changed the mic to the Logitech, and can you, yes, okay. I could change it to my $300 Plantronics, and you'd be horrified. It's just so bad. So, so what I'm saying is sometimes we don't even realize how bad the sound is until we hear good sound. Does that make sense? And someone who's got really good ears probably thinks I could do better. You know what I mean? So who's used to even better sound. So, and then so some lighting considerations, of course, not backlighting yourself. These are just basics. You know, if you can light your face with the same temperature of light as your virtual background is what that should be said. If you use a virtual background, like Nikki's using a virtual background, I believe, it looks that damn good though, okay? Is that he looks like he should be in that office though, right? He looks like he should be in that office. We're not in the valley of the uncanny, which becomes all distracting, right? It's that he looks like, so sometimes people have too warm of lights for that background and it would be like, it just looks stupid, right? Or they have a really, you know, like let's say my background here where that's a real background, but I mean, they might have that as their picture. And if they're too white, it's not gonna, it's gonna feel wrong, okay? So, oh, so what do you got? You got a light there? There you go. Okay, he's got a ring light happening. Okay, so it's funny to see him like dancing around like that. Okay, all right. So let's yeah. So while we're talking about backgrounds, this is something I did a long time ago. Was I started doing a chalk wall, Suresh. I had someone make me a branded chalk wall that I stood in front of, and that was the only thing people could see of my office. So it was kind of a way of controlling, you know, the perception, you know. And then I have friends who've done, and I did one of these too in my old office, was kind of a vinyl background. Real physical backgrounds are just so much easier to kind of pull off in a lot of ways, okay? Because bad virtual backgrounds, you know what those look like. So they're, you know, we just don't want to have that ghosting, but they can look really sharp. So, but it all comes down to lighting and actually having, you know, a solid background behind it. Yeah, okay. And this is just a cool hack for anyone who has limited space. Or Suresh, if you wanted to do one above your chalkboard, you could do that, right? And it's just, you get a roller blind and you tape onto it. This is my friend just taped it on with duct tape, but basically that cloth. So that's just a quick little hack for you, okay? So I think, oh, I do want to show you this. This is just free resources. If you wanted to take a look a little further, there's a short link, and you can access virtual selling audits, see how you're doing, recommended gear lists that we went through here today, plus other things that are on Amazon if you want to kind of up your game that way. A pre-meeting checklist. We didn't really talk about that too much, but I do a vocal warm-up. I do a physical warm-up, some things that just to get me in the right state for presentations. But I think I'll probably end it there. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Also, my website is, maybe I'll throw it in the chat just in case you want to check that out if you have any other further information. And other than that, I'll there we go. There's my website. Any questions that anyone had, or we're good? Okay, I'll hand it back to Nikki then. And
No,
Nikki,
Anders, is that a real background then?
I'll prove it. I'll prove it.
Yeah, go on.
Look it. See, I'm back here and that light's back up on my wall. I can't get that far, but that's actually there. But you know what's fun is I have like a coaching group, okay, that the people have taken my training and we do calls. I took a picture from that exact angle and I put up a green screen and I lit it properly and I made that my background, okay? So they've been used to the coaching calls. And so no one noticed it was a virtual background because, you know, I wasn't ghosting and all this stuff. And we were talking about backgrounds. And then I said, oh yeah, I'm using one right now. And I clicked and I brought it down and everyone's jaws just dropped because first of all, I cheated because I set them up. They know what it looks like, right? And then they don't think about it. So it's a little bit of a magic trick, but that was kind of fun. And then there's also things you can do where, yeah. Oh, look at Nikki. What? Nikki's. I could have got out of the way and you could have got a clean one. But yeah, it's like, where the heck?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just have to be covering you. Then it's fine.
That's right. You just got to go. Yeah. Nikki's having fun. Okay. So yes, the real background. Yeah. Very good. Did you guys learn something? Yeah. You guys got a takeaway? Okay, good. Well, I'm glad then.
Yeah, I just want to know about how do you manage about the group activities?
How do I manage group activities, Indika?
Yes, yes.
Well, I mean, in Zoom, I mean, you can do breakout rooms, you can do different things like that. We didn't even talk about using some of the platform tools like polls and things that are built in to be able to manage, you know, this group here. But breakout rooms definitely is nice in the sense that, you know, if I'm talking the whole time, you know, you guys want to share things, you want to do things, right? And so it does change the dynamics when you go into a breakout room and it becomes kind of intimate. You have, you know, 3 people that you're talking to or whatever. That is a good way of keeping them engaged over a long period of time. So does that kind of answer your question, Indika, or are you looking for something else?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I got the point. Yeah. Thank
While
you.
we're talking about that, if you do ever use video in your, you know, virtual presentations, someone shared, a friend of mine shared this with me. If you ever film a video outside and then you present it in a virtual call, it's almost like a mental holiday for people. They will actually feel refreshed, like they went somewhere else. Okay, so sometimes it seems silly to do a video of you talking just in another location when you could have just said the same thing here, but the change is enough to make people, you know, refresh their brains and make them feel like they had something different.